confidence is the outcome or the output of having courage. You gain confidence by having courage to do hard things.
Jess, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
PR is sort of in the mental health space in some regard.
It's really about being able to relate to people.
I think you have to have self-confidence to be able to have that introspection. Do you think that you are always confident?
It comes from taking risks. It comes from trying things, failing, picking yourself back up.
I think if you don't have self-trust in some regard, it's very hard to take risks.
It wasn't until I hit my 30s and I called off my wedding 4 months before it was supposed to happen.
Please get into it.
The hardest time to leave something, a job, a friendship, a location, or a relationship, is when nothing's wrong, but it's not right.
Part of the podcast, and I say it all the time, get uncomfortable for the sake of real comfortability. You know, it's obviously really scary to like step into the unknown.
On the other side of fear was this whole new life of opportunity. Doing the hard thing opens up a world of possibility and opportunity that looks way different from what I thought. But man, if I can do that, what else can I do?
You're listening to How I See It, hosted by Han. You guessed it, that's me. I am here to motivate and inspire you with guests from all different industries and backgrounds. So get ready for personal stories of success, of growth, full of highs and lows, and of course, unapologetic realness. This is How I See It. Okay, you guys, I am so excited to welcome Jess Windell to the podcast, aka the PR Maven. She is the founder of Maven PR. She's worked with CPG brands that we all know and love, like Perfect Bar, Good Wipes, Koya, and many others. Jess, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I am so excited. I mean, you know, this is a mental health podcast, and I've known you for a while now. And the interesting thing about you and your job and just like what I've learned working with you is that like PR is sort of like in the mental health space in some regard.
It's all psychology. And you know that both of my parents are therapists.
I know. I want you to share because it's so interesting to me.
But it is. It's such a rendition of psychology and human psychology and the way people think and they perceive that then dictates their behavior. So it is. It's not only about having good mental health when you're in this career because it's insane and will run you ragged, but it's really about being able to relate to people.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting because I do feel like if you are not in touch with yourself and your own emotions and the things that you've been through, it's very hard to be able to do that for other people. And I think you do it flawlessly, not even just with the founders you work with, but also the brands that you work with as well. And in regard to changing the perception of the public, which is like an art, and it's interesting.
It is. Yeah, it's so different from marketing, which is a little bit more like a science. There's just metrics and quantifiable things. And we go off so much feeling. We go off so much of like intuition. And that takes a lot of introspection. I have to work on that for myself in order to instill that confidence in my clients. Like, this might seem crazy. This might seem like it might not work, but you just have to trust me because like I have an inkling for it. And that has been 20 years of doing this. But it's like introspection, but also just like tapping into what people think and how they feel and what's going to like get a rise out of them.
Yeah. And I think you have to have, you know, self-confidence to be able to have that introspection. Do you think that you were always confident in regard to your emotions? I know you said that you were raised with therapists.
It comes from taking risks. It comes from trying things, failing, picking yourself back up. Like that is such a learned skill. I mean, you could be born with confidence and leadership. I'm definitely opinionated, always have been, always been in a leadership role and really enjoyed that. But I do think the more that you do and prove to yourself that you can do it, you bolster that confidence like tenfold.
A lot of people are scared, and a lot of people here on the podcast always ask too, like, how do you have the confidence to do this? And I think it's about just doing it and then being able to look at the timeline after you've accumulated like a resume of things that you've taken chances on.
Such a great way to put it. It's more courage, I think, than confidence. And if we look at it as like confidence is the outcome or the output of having courage. So you don't gain confidence by having confidence. You gain confidence by having courage to do hard things, to bet on yourself, to trust your intuition. There's so many aspects of life that bolster that courage and allow you to do the hard things. When it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, not to go super like psychology, but when your immediate needs are met, you feel safe, you're fed, you know, at the highest form is like self-realization only if all these other needs are met. So if you feel that you know, you love where you live, you're healthy, right? You're well fed and nourished, you can then make decisions that people who are not in those positions could never do because they're so worried about those immediate needs.
Yeah.
Growing up, I would say like my emotional, physical, situational needs were always met. So it allowed me to take a risk and know that I could fall back and I would always have a soft place to land. My parents being that place, but also friends.
Yeah.
So when you are able to like go out on the ledge and like dip your toe in the water, you're like, I'm gonna be okay. And if I'm not, what's the worst that could happen? I'll be okay.
Yeah.
And that's how you gain that self-trust and doing hard things. Gosh, I push people in my life to do that. And that goes with clients too, right? Like, let's try this. And if it doesn't work, okay, we learned.
Yeah.
But if we didn't try, like high risk, high reward, baby. Like you got to go for it in order to have something go viral, to get, you know, something that's worthy of a Wall Street Journal article. There's a reason that those are so highly coveted. Not everybody gets them. It's the brands and the people and the founders that are doing cool shit that might not work out.
There's an interesting charge around like rejection and failure for a lot of people. I think I'm very similar to you in the sense of like, I've never looked at taking a risk, especially in my business and what I'm doing, as something that like, if I don't do it, then I like failed in some way, because to me, it's like I already didn't have it. It feels very low stakes to me to like try and do things, because I'm like, okay, the worst that can happen is that like I'm in the same place that I'm in, you know, in now. Your life can only get better for the most part, I think, with a lot of risks.
Totally. And it's so cliche to say, but the opposite of growth and change is death. Like if you just stay stagnant, you can, but honestly, I think your soul dies a little bit when you do that, right? It's like you can not evolve and just stay in the same place, you know, physically and theoretically, but like you will probably like die out in some way.
Well, I think that not, you know, fulfilling our potential or not going after the things that I think are really like calling us to does start to like, you know, edge away at us. I think that if you're called to do something, or you feel that you're not living to your potential, the weight of that can be detrimental. But going back to your point around self-trust, I think that all of this requires a level of self-trust. Courage and self-trust kind of go hand in hand. But I think if you don't have self-trust in some regard, it's very hard to take risks. How do you think you like nurtured that within yourself over the years?
Literally doing it. I mean, I can't say that there are that many examples in my career outside of starting 2 businesses in the middle of COVID that I was super risk taking. I went to school 2 hours away from my childhood home. That to me is like not that big of a risk. Studied abroad, big deal. So did everyone else. Like there's not these big moments. It wasn't until I would say I hit my 30s and I called off my wedding 4 months before it was supposed to happen.
Please get into it. You can't just say that and not get into all the details.
Well, I think that was the start though, where I really just realized, oh my gosh, doing the hard thing opens up a world of possibility and opportunity that looks way different from what I thought. But man, if I can do that, what else can I do? And that was honestly, in hindsight, it's been almost 10 years. Looking back, that was like the catalyst for every other big decision I made after that.
Well, because it showed you your like what you could do and what you were capable of, and also like what type of happiness you had access to in your life that maybe you didn't feel you had.
Yeah.
Was this a long-term boyfriend that you had?
Yeah, it was 4 years, lived together. I mean, and at the ripe age of 31, you're like, oh gosh, time is running out. I need to settle down, have kids, buy a house. Everyone else around me is doing it. My life is over if I don't. And after 4 years, there's sunk costs involved, right? But having marriage therapists as parents, I knew what forever looked like. I knew I didn't want to get divorced. I knew I didn't want to be a single mom. And I knew that I just had a bigger purpose in life to live than the path that was laid out in front of me. And there was obviously some other things, but overall, it was a really healthy relationship that I was happy with, proud of, content with. And the hardest time to leave something, a job, a friendship, a location, and or a relationship, is when nothing's wrong, but it's not right.
Yes. Like when it's comfortable.
And nothing is that bad.
Yeah.
There's no deal breakers on the table. That is truly the hardest time to leave, especially when you're in a job that you get paid really well and you have a lot of flexibility, but you're like dying a slow death and you know there's something more for you. Taking those risks, jumping on the other side, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. So uncertainty will inhibit you from making decisions that will ultimately set you free.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you bring this up because a huge part of the podcast, and I say it all the time, it's like on all of our merch and stuff, is like get uncomfortable for the sake of real comfortability. You know, it's obviously really scary to like step into the unknown. Like it's much easier to stay in the relationship you've been in for a while, not question it, go through with the wedding. I mean, I can't even imagine having like a wedding plan.
It was going to be the like best wedding ever. It was going to be in Mexico, just like party of a freaking lifetime. I'm like, can we just like still do it and not legally get married and just like still have the party?
Well, I think you were in this crossroads of like, it's not actually comfortable. I think we convince ourselves that like the spaces we're in, whether it's in our mental health, whether it's in our relationship, whether it's in our job, are comfortable, when in reality, like not living to your potential and not actually pursuing something that you're curious about is like the thing we should be doing. That's the more comfortable, feel good choice. It's just hard to get there. It takes courage, to your point.
Definitely. And I think it did open my eyes to, again, if I can do this, what else can I do? So I thereafter started 2 businesses. I moved states just for the hell of it. I always was like, oh, a partner or a job could get me to move out of Southern California. And I was like, why? Why does it have to be that? Why does it have to be something dragging me? Why can't I just make this decision for myself? All of a sudden, we weren't going into offices. All my clients were across the country, if not across the world. I'm like, I can live anywhere. I want to go somewhere where I don't know anyone. Not for the sake of starting over. I only lived in a different state for a year and a half. It was literally just because I didn't want to stay a big fish in a small pond where I knew a city like the back of my hand. I wanted to just meet people in this stage of life and explore a new place. And I did just that. And I honestly, not only would I probably be married with kids at that point had I gone through with the wedding, but it was that first like feeling of like, oh, okay, wait, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It was terrible, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And on the other side of fear was this whole new life of opportunity.
Yeah, well, and I think to our whole like timeline approach, like once you do something like that and get through it and get to the other side, you start to view these like tunnels and you're like, I actually can see the light. Like I know that it's coming. I've been through something similar. I've been through something harder. This is possible. Because I think there was a point in my life where I like was not good at seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I was so depressed. I was so anxious. And I was like, oh my God, no, there's no end to this. And I think once you do like step over really hard pieces of trauma or things in your life, you're like, oh fuck, like I've been through really hard things. Now when something pops up, I'm like, I see the light. Like this darkness isn't forever.
And not to get super woo-woo, but when we talk about like manifestation and law of attraction, one of the main premises in that is don't worry about the how or exactly how it's supposed to look. Worry about the feeling that you want to have. And so I often just root myself back into the feelings that I want to feel whenever something happens. So if I get a potential client that I'm like, oh my God, I would just kill to work with this brand, and it doesn't work out for whatever reason, I tell myself that feeling that you had, that excitement that you had about this brand or this company or whatever it was that they're doing, you can feel that again. It's going to look different. It's going to act different. And it might not be anytime soon, but at least you know what that feels like. Same thing goes for a relationship. Same thing goes for a place that you're looking to rent or buy, and you walk in and you're like, oh my God, this is it. You don't get it. That could just crumble some people. And honestly, it does. Like some people
totally
let
does.
that affect them. But if you focus on the feeling that you want to have, and even, you know, I could have moved to Denver, New York, or Miami, and I'm like, what do I want to feel when I'm there? Like those are all very different places. And it was less about the where and the how and more about like how I wanted to feel at the end of it. So that light at the end of the tunnel should be more of a feeling than a specific look. It should really be like, how do I want to feel at the end of this?
I love that you brought this up because I do think that like it's a control thing, right? Like I think a lot of people don't make it through like the rejection, I guess we'll call it, of what they thought their path was going to be or how the situation was going to unfold, because they got so attached, because it gives them control to like plan out their life. And I think for me, like I struggle so much with control. It's just not in business. Like business, I'm very good at like rolling with the punches. I think it's harder for me in my personal life because emotions are scarier for me than like business decisions. I'm very like logical and blunt. But I do think it's like letting go of the grasp we have on like the way we think our path is supposed to unfold, and being able to be like, I actually like welcome change. And I think that the more I started doing that, especially in my business, the more I realized how much success comes from actually like relinquishing. Who am I to decide where my path should go?
Yeah. Going back to like entrepreneurship, having so much control can be a detriment, because you are in the driver's seat and you are the one making all the decisions. No one's making them for you.
Yeah.
And so when you do live alone, you don't have kids, you don't have a partner, you don't have a boss, you don't have parents that need you for health reasons. Especially if you have ADHD, you're like, oh my God, I could do everything. I wake up this morning and if I don't have stuff on my calendar, the world is my oyster. That can be debilitating. And so I think it's a spectrum, right? Like someone whose life is just dictated for them, everything is mapped out, not because they want it to, but because they have to, versus having so much control and then having to find that happy medium where you're like, this is a place where I feel good. These are elements that I don't think I'm going to be overbearing in control, but also like it gives me some structure. It gives me routine. It gives me some guidance. It's a tough place to be.
No, it totally is. And it's so funny because it reminds me in like a different stroke of what I was talking about on my Substack the other day. I was talking about like accepting the gray area and how hard it is when you are a control freak to accept that things aren't black and white, that there's a gray. And I actually think it applies here too. It is very difficult to find like the gray in the middle and like the balance. But I think that's the key, the secret sauce in having like contentment and peace and happiness in the trials of the ups and downs of like, whether it's your mental health, your business, your relationship, is finding this like area of ambiguity and being able to sit there and be okay in it.
So hard.
Oh, it's so hard.
So hard, especially when you're super goal driven and you like productivity and not having it is my kryptonite. Like
That's how I am too.
I mean, what time is it? Like 11 a.m. Like I can't even tell you all the things I already did today. And I wouldn't have it any other way. So when I have downtime, because I'm like, I have so many things I need to do, want to do, have to get to in terms of what I imagine for my life, that my time becomes the victim of my productivity. And I don't watch TV. My therapist is always like, I'm so proud of you when you watched a show, because I know you don't. And it's like those types of things, like that is truly one of my biggest issues is I always have to feel productive.
Oh, me too.
Because we're like working towards things. And if my time is mine to dictate, then I better be using it wisely.
No, totally. And I think for a while, I had this recent realization, like about a year ago, like maybe 8 months ago, that I was like definitely, and I think everyone's is different, like their wound with this or like the reason why they do it. But for me, mine was definitely like escapism. I was like, if I just hone in, and plus I'm super ambitious, I think if I just hone in, work, and especially because I love what I do, I don't have to think about sitting with my feelings or sitting with like the unknown. And so the moment I actually started really investigating that, I think I actually was able to like lean a little bit more into like a shade of gray. So it's been interesting because I feel like recently, I was talking to my dad on the phone yesterday actually, and I was like, he was just like asking me for an update. We don't talk a ton, like we'll do catch ups.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm actually feeling like kind of anxious right now because I don't feel anxious about not being super hyper productive this week. Like
It's
I'm
like such a different feeling.
Yes.
For you.
And I'm like, why am I not like anxious right now that I'm not like quote unquote working as hard? And I think to other people, they'd be like, that's insane.
Like your 50% is most people's 100%.
Yes. He was like, that's so good. And I was like, really? Because my dad's super entrepreneur intense as well. So I think he's working on it too.
Yeah.
We're all healing. We're all healing everywhere. But it was funny because he was like, that's good. And I was like, I guess you're right. Like, I guess it is good that I like feel fine being slower in like a summer week.
Totally. And I think for everyone, it has to look different and not like the traditional relaxing. I am never going to just lay on the beach
No.
for a couple hours, even on a Saturday. Like, I just can't. Like, I'll play beach tennis, I'll, go for a walk, but it's just not me. And now that I do live at the beach, my morning ritual is to do a walking meditation for 20 minutes because I had some spurts of 10-minute meditation sitting on my couch, but like, I know that that's just not realistic for me. There's 75 other things I want to get done before 8 a.m. rolls around, that like a 10-minute meditation sitting on my couch just is like a fire inside me is like, get the hell
You're
up.
not getting regulated.
No. So now I'm doing a 20-minute walking meditation and I crave it every morning doing that walk. That to me is now a non-negotiable. It's okay that I'm not sitting on my couch for 10 minutes doing a guided meditation, and that may work for some people. But I think to try and fit ourselves in this mold of what relaxing should look like, what productivity should look like, it's just this comparison spiral.
Yeah. This is how we reach for control in a lot of ways. Like, if we can pick an exact way to do it or follow everybody else, it's like, okay, then I'm doing it the right thing. But I think it, again, going back to courage, I don't think people think of courage like this, but it does take courage to try different things and try different versions of mental health practices or working out or even jobs. Like, it takes courage to explore what works for you, because it's scary to not know.
Totally. In every aspect of life.
So I want to ask you, before we move on from the wedding stuff, I can imagine, in hindsight, you look back, especially after the fact, and you're like, I'm so glad I did that. I feel so strong. In that moment, I can imagine it's one of those moments in your life where you're like, that was a dark night of the soul. What popped up in that low moment for you?
It was a low moment because I was grieving the loss of a beautiful relationship, and I was really sad to, that person's your everything. Like, your partner is so much more than just a relationship.
But I also think you were kind of letting go of the stereotype that you felt like you needed
to
follow too.
Yeah. I think, it was not just a low moment. It was a low couple months, if not longer after. But I think what had me holding on to staying committed to my decision was that self-trust and knowing that I was going to be okay. And again, it wasn't going to look the way that I had planned. And you're grieving the loss of the future that you thought you were going to have too. It was the support I had around me that truly kept me afloat. And about my stool theory, which is,
please tell everyone,
which is, if you have a stool with 4 legs and a seat, to me, you're the seat, your own self-worth, your trust in yourself. Some people just lack that self-worth, that they're like, I'm not good enough, and therefore I have to stay in this job. I have to stay in this relationship. I have to stay in an abusive friendship even, because I'm not good enough. So that seat is your own self-worth. And then the 4 legs of the stool are your family, your friends, your job, and your relationship. And for me, family, friends, job, and my self-worth were pretty solid. And if stool has 4 legs for a reason, you really do need all 4. But if one is a little bit wobbly, the other 3 and the seat can hold it up. And so for me, the rest of my life ecosystem was pretty solid, that I felt like I could pull this leg out and I'd be okay for a little while. Now, if you told me 9 years later that I would still be not married with kids, would I still make that decision? The answer is hell yes, because if not, I would not have had the last 9 years of experiences and just absolute incredible endeavors without making that one single decision.
Yeah. Before I ask, I really want to get into how you started your company and what made you jump into entrepreneurship. But before I do, I do love that you brought this up, because I do think a lot of people, especially women, feel this pressure to get married, have kids. Obviously, we do have a timeline there is a biological clock if you want children. With that said, I do think that a lot of women view this tick on the to-do or the accomplishment sheet as this requirement to be good enough. How have you maneuvered that now where you are, we're friends. I know your life, you're dating, you're successful, you have this amazing company, but I also can imagine that you get questions of when are you getting married? And
one of my biggest qualms that I hear is when people are like, oh yeah, well, you've put your career first and that's why you're not married with kids. And the fact of the matter is that could not be further from the truth, because I've always made dating a priority. I've always had this goal in mind. It's the one thing that I just haven't cracked the code on. However, do I think I could have invested as much time and energy into my businesses, my personal life, myself, my health, my wellness? If I had had that, probably not. It just wouldn't look the same. It would look very different, but I didn't choose one or the other. I always like to share that because I don't think it's fair to assume that women especially have deliberately made the decision to put their career first over a family if it's something that they genuinely want. And then the good enough question is, I just think it's about what you tie your worth to. And to me, I've created a very, very, very full life that I'm very proud of, where each of the aspects of my life contain a little bit of worth for me and a little bit of purpose. My entire purpose is not in my career. My entire purpose is not in my friends or my hobbies or my family or a relationship. And so the good enough to me is when I do have a partner and kids, it will be the cherry on top to a beautiful life. Yeah. And I think we often throw ourselves into one thing because it's the most solid or certain thing that we have. And if you do that, when that one thing takes a turn, you will crumble. And if you diversify your energy and your attention, if one thing goes awry, stool theory again, one thing goes awry, you're like, okay, well, that's a little off right now, but at least I have these other things. At least I have this big trip coming up. At least I have my family and I always say, at least, we're all healthy. We're together. We live an hour from each other. What a beautiful thing. Like, how can you focus on the parts of your life that are actually really, really good? Nothing is going to be a 10 out of 10 at all times. And if it is, it's a little fabricated. Like, there's no way. There's no way things are 10 out of a 10 where you're like, I would not choose to have this go any better. There's always going to be more to accomplish, to have. So if you think about the fluctuation of all these aspects of your life, like, one is allowed to take a little bit of a back seat while the others build.
Totally. I love that you brought this up because I do think, like, I don't call it a stool, but I'm always like joking with my best friend, like, oh, like 3 of my pillars are just like shaky right now. I think we all have like those 5 pillars, like you said, like your job, your mental health, your emotional health, the relationship, all of that. And I realized, I think, over the last couple of years, how much I was tying my worth to my career, because I was like, oh my God, if something were to happen to this pillar, I would feel like I have nothing. And it was like this big, like, vulnerable realization for me, because I was like, oh my gosh, I've put so much of my worth and stock into what I've built, which is great and awesome. And I'm really proud of myself, but also, like, how scary to put so much pressure on something that I care about in that way, to be the only thing that's like bringing me joy and satisfaction. So I feel like I've had to almost, in a different way, like, look for worth elsewhere and like try to build more hobbies and more community, which has been interesting. And it seems like you've done a good job of doing that.
Thank you. I want to just comment though on you saying, like, if it didn't work out, like if my ventures just closed up shop tomorrow, what would I do? And things are meant to end. Like, everything has an end to it. And if we start thinking, I love when people say a season, reason, or a lifetime. Most things are a season or a reason. And so what you've gained expertise and experience-wise in what you've built over the last several years would only catapult you into the next thing. So when COVID happened, so many people's roles, responsibilities, careers took a turn, and it certainly catapulted some of us into different things that we are still seeing out. But if we think about, something happening that is out of your control, inhibiting you from continuing on in something you thought was going to last forever, and that crushes you, instead of it pivoting you, instead of it opening you up to something else, like, that's the mindset shift that I think we all have to have in every aspect of our lives. That, like, the person I am now, I have friends that are getting divorced and thought it was their life was absolutely over. There's no reason to live on after this. And, just a few months after, they found new love, and it's like this whole new world. Similarly, like, if you put all of your stake in how this looks today and don't think about, what did I learn from this? How did I grow from this? Who am I now because of this? That's going to then take me into this next wave of life that I don't even know what it's going to look like. Like, that will kill us slowly as well.
No, totally. And I think, again, it's back to that ambiguity, like gray area of, knowing that like you're not stuck and that you could pivot and do whatever you want and continue to choose differently while also not attaching your worth to it at the same time. And it's this dance that I think I'm still trying to figure out when it comes to entrepreneurship. But I would love for you to get into, going back to the pandemic, how you went from, you were working at Perfect Bar, right? How you went from working as like the marketing PR to actually starting your own agency. Because I feel like you're always, to me, giving entrepreneur. Like I couldn't imagine you working for someone else, but I didn't know you at that time.
I never wanted to start my own business.
So
ever.
crazy.
I was always very leadership forward, and I always wanted to have a seat at the table. And because I worked for startups, I was able to.
Yeah.
I regret not working in a corporate environment. I think that would have been a nice like change of scenery, but
You
your
totally
girl
are
is
giving that.
your
Like,
girl
you
is
would do
scrappy
that.
because of it. I remember specifically saying to the founders of Perfect Bar, like, I'm so happy to help you build what you created. I don't feel this like burning desire to start something on my own. And, you know, we have some friends that started their first company at 23. Like that wasn't me. I was 34. And it really came from the burning desire to change the way that PR was being done. And I was honestly just frustrated. Like it came out of, why isn't anybody doing it the way that these brands need it done? I have to do it.
What
like,
did you
I
feel
felt
like they
called.
were doing? And what do you feel like you saw that was missing in the space?
So I worked for an agency for 7 years right out of college. And then I was in-house for Perfect Bar for 5 years.
So
and
cool.
I fired 3 PR agencies when I was in-house, all of whom are my great friends now.
Wait, I'm dead. That's
But
awesome.
I ended up building an in-house team because I was like, these agencies back then, it was just so traditional. And we were a very fast growing brand in 5 years, just hundreds of millions of dollars in growth.
Wow.
And we needed a very fast acting, quick response PR agency that was thinking outside the box. And I didn't feel that we were getting that at the time. And so I pitched my boss if I could build an in-house team, and I did just that. So when we got acquired, I started looking around. I had started a nonprofit in San Diego that was working with a lot of different brands at the time, just hearing their horror stories of working with PR agencies. And everyone had the same sentiment that I had, being the point of contact. And I was like, if I could do what I did for Perfect Bar with all these other brands, imagine the perception that PR would have. So I honestly was on a mission to do PR for PR, where I'm like,
funny.
I don't want people to have a bad taste in their mouth when they engage with an agency or a contractor, or where they, think about PR. How can we make them have a positive experience? We have to do it differently. So my goal was essentially to bridge the gap between PR and marketing versus just have PR siloed in this channel where it's functioning on its own. No one really knows what they're doing, but they just like somehow get results. We needed integration. And so after almost 6 years, I believe that that's what Maven does, is we truly integrate with the brand marketing team. If not, we are the brand marketing team with some of our brands. And we look at other functions of the business that most PR agencies and publicists just don't know how to speak that language. Sales, ops, all these things that I learned being in-house at Perfect Bar that I would have never been privy to had I stayed at an agency. I was always like just an arm's distance away from those conversations. And oftentimes an outside agency, I mean, it's kind of the way that you work with your clients too, where you're only privy to what questions you ask and what they share with you.
Totally.
You are not in the conversations that they don't think you should be in. So I wanted a seat at the table, and we set the precedent with that oftentimes with our clients up front, where we're like, we're going to go above and beyond the arenas you think we should be playing in, just so that we make sure we leave no stone unturned.
Yeah, because I think PR and marketing are obviously not the same things, but I think a lot of PR companies do not utilize strategy that you need in marketing to create a story. And I think now in the day and age we live in, especially with social media and all these digital editorials and platforms, like you kind of have to have a story, a cultural moment, like you always say, to be able to integrate a brand successfully. And to do that, you have to have strategy. So there is an element of not just submitting brands and like who they are anymore. Like you have to actually be strategic.
It's all about storytelling and showing up in a place that there's a story to be told versus just sharing the attributes of your brand and your products, right? We talk about billboards and just print ads, paid ads that you're seeing just pop up in your algorithm that you didn't ask for versus an endorsement of somebody that you already follow or listen to, and they're talking about a product, a brand, a founder, and you're like, oh my gosh, that makes total sense why you would be talking about them because I know that you love this, this, and this. That totally tracks. Versus even some of the, advertisements that are on podcasts, you're like, so weird that podcast is promoting this product when I know that host would never use or try this product. It's so random. That's the difference. The really natural organic integration into something that you're already choosing to listen to watch versus something that you don't even know how it like got in your
in your algorithm.
Yeah.
Why did you call it Maven?
There is a book called The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, and he talks about different members of society that all are required to have like a full functioning society. And mavens, he describes them as, this is really the definition of a maven is expert connoisseur, but he talks about how they are the people that the society goes to get their information, to get the truth, and oftentimes the truth that no one else is telling.
Love.
So it's unique to me in the sense of I loved that book and I loved that, we're the storytellers, we're the experts. And it's also why I've niched down in the industries that I focus on. There are certain PR agencies, including the first one I was at, where I had 12 clients in 12 different industries. You're unable to be an expert in any one of those industries. I was doing real estate, bail bonds, and like cat subscription boxes. Do you think that the editors in any of those arenas are similar at all in terms of what they care about? What we have to understand is what's going to be cool and interesting to this writer because we know the industry so well. You look like a fool if you're going to that writer and saying, I have something really interesting that you're going to love and your readers are going to just click through 100% of the time. And they're like, this is nothing worth talking about.
I like that you said that mavens are about like spreading truth. I feel like I'm a maven too, because I feel like this whole podcast is about being unapologetic and being
maven.
Thank you. No, I totally am, because I feel so strongly about being like integritous and unapologetic and how that contributes to overall alignment. But I do think even in regard to like messaging and building stories, like the reason why audiences now are resonating so much with truth and so much with vulnerability is because we have so little of it. So I do think that's why the PR scape is shifting, and you're smart to jump on it. And you started so long ago with this voice of like truth. I'm not going to just sell you on my services if I don't think you need them or if you could do it yourself.
Going back to just like the courage conversation, this happened yesterday where we've been working with this kids snacking brand for over 6 months, and they stopped themselves because they knew what I was going to come back with. We're putting out this report, and they said something like, well, it'd be really nice if we had, more of the brand call out in this report. And I said, I am just going to stop you there. They're like, we know what you're going to say. It's too self-serving. It needs to not be about us because we're putting information forward that's valuable to the end consumer.
Yeah.
And I was like, exactly. So it requires me to have the courage and the confidence to push back when the truth is not going to come through, or when a brand is trying to go to marketing advertising. I call it like marketing puffery. It's like, we don't want your marketing language about why your product is so great. We need to talk about the difference between this ingredient and this ingredient objectively and factually. There needs to be nothing in here that's like colorful language. We got to serve up the facts. And so that to me is very Maven-esque, where I have to push back all the time. And I think my team knows that. Like, I'm just not afraid to tell someone, we're not going to do that, and here's why. PR doesn't work like that. You're probably used to marketing, but we will not put a press release out that shares this news because it's not newsworthy. This is something you should put on your blog, and we're just very forthcoming with that. And we have to stay so strongly rooted in order to uphold our integrity so that the stakeholders, influencers, podcast hosts, editors, writers, they take us seriously, and they know whatever Maven's bringing to us is going to be legit. They're not letting their client dictate what they tell us.
What I love about you is like you always fill in the gaps. You created something, and I would love for you to share, because I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs listening to the podcast too that would benefit from it.
Yeah, I think going back to saying no to something doesn't serve your greater purpose or your goals, I over the last 6 years have been all referral based. I think I've sent 2 cold emails out to ask brands if they'd want to meet, but therefore I get a lot of inbound that don't quite fit our criteria. So I turn away about 90% of the brands that come to us because they just don't fit the perfect formula of what we think we can be successful with for a number of reasons. Oftentimes that they either just don't have a good story to tell and they're just like another, protein bar in the mix.
Yeah.
Or they just, size-wise aren't quite ready for a full service agency. And so my true mission is to democratize PR and demystify it. And so I spent a year creating the first DIY course and toolkit for emerging brands so that when I talked to a brand founder who just wasn't quite at the mark that I needed them to be at to work with Maven full service, it wasn't an all or nothing conversation. You're either doing PR or you're not. So I wanted to create something that they could build with, evolve with, and then ultimately kind of incubate them within my ecosystem. So it's called Catalyst by Maven. It's an on-demand course and toolkit that brands can subscribe to, and it comes with all the tools and resources that you need to actually execute a plan. So we provide media contacts, we provide influencers, awards lists, templates, and tools and examples that literally put the ownership on the brand in those early stages. So they own the relationships with these key contacts and they don't cut them off when they can no longer pay a PR agency.
Yeah, it's so cool. I love that you did that. I think it's really smart too because you're filling in the gap of education. I think PR is thrown around a lot. We know the word PR, but no one actually knows what it means. So I think you're filling in the gap of education and actually allowing people to, like you said, take things into your own hands. And I think it's like really, really smart of you. I love it. Something I love about you, I think you've really found what lights you on fire and you've found your purpose. And I think you let it propel you. How do you feel like other people can start to really embody that energy? I think a lot of us get stuck in the identity we've created. I think it's safe and it also gives us some control, but I think a lot of life is being able to actually evolve and move through and like use the fire from something else you love to build something else. How do you think people can really like lean into that? Because I think you've developed it well.
Thank you. And I love this question so much because I think I've harnessed this skill over the past year and a half. I did not always have it, but leaning into your strengths by knowing what they are. There's a very silly, almost like a Myers-Briggs software called Clifton Strengths Test. And it's like $49. And you take a Myers-Briggs like test and it tells you what your key strengths are. And I have everyone on my team do it. And it is so wildly interesting to see where you fall. Mine, almost all, they give you your top 5 and then they rank the 39. All of mine is influence, leadership, like visionary. None of it is tactical, execution, like numbers, none of it. And the second that I learned that, I was like, okay, so if that's where my zone of genius is, everything else needs to be handled by someone that's not me. So when I realized that, I hired a full-time executive assistant because, I hate emails. Going into my inbox is just the bane of my existence. And I know that now. And so having someone else handle that just takes this like energetic lift off my shoulders that allows me to then show up for the things that I am really good at. So when I understand that me influencing and sharing and having conversations, I'd rather sit on calls for 8 hours a day than sit behind my computer and work any day. Knowing your strengths and using this tool to kind of like get you there allows you to lean into those and follow the path there. And it's insane what happens when you actually get to do more of what you love and less of what you don't. Like life is hard. We have so many things that require our attention. I have cleaning people at my house right now because you better believe like I hate folding laundry. Obviously I upkeep my house. They come once a month, but it's like I know that will drain me more than just like having it done, paying for it, and like the energetic drain is just not worth it to me.
Well, and putting your productivity elsewhere.
Yeah, and like energy. And I like get my groceries delivered. Like it's these things that I know take so much out of me in order to just do something that maybe other people don't mind doing, or it's something that like can be delegated.
Yeah. No, that's how I am too with like maybe this is like a slight entrepreneur ADHD thing, but like all small tasks like that are unimportant, I'm not good at, but then they become important because I've been putting them off for
Like
so long.
parking tickets,
Like anything where you have to renew something, laundry, cleaning. Yeah.
It's like executive functioning for ADHD. It's like you're really good at being on and really good at showing up, and everyone, I mean,
Big execution.
I hate when everyone's like, oh my God, like, how do you do it all? Like, you do so much. And I'm like, I don't. Like, I have help. And it's not without these other things being taken care of that I can look like I have it all together.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think something you said to me on the phone that I thought was really good, and I think you slightly touched on it right now, is that like you have to lean into what you're good at and then use that as fuel to have the confidence to pivot. And I think that we mentioned it earlier. I feel like I have gone through it a couple times now where I've like felt the anxiety of having to pivot and then realized how much I gained from it. I think you've had a lot of those in your career as well. For someone listening who's maybe in the moment of the pivot and they feel anxious and they don't know what to do, what would you say to them right now?
I don't think it has to be as hard of a pivot as people think it does.
Or mean so much.
Yeah. Before I started Maven, I hired a business coach 6 months before I quit my job. And I had her not only help me just get everything in the works so that I felt like when I did cut the cord, I was already like leaps and bounds ahead of like, okay, shit, I don't have a job today. And now I'm in this new job and I'm just starting from scratch. Side hustles are such a thing, right? I have another business, a sleep wellness brand that we really drummed up for a year before we hit go. And
I know I didn't even mention that you're the founder of Drift.
yes, but that being said is I don't think it has to be like what you were saying earlier about so black and white. Like there's gray area that exists for a reason. Like you don't run a marathon the day that you decide to do it, you train for it. And so if we think about pivots as something that you can explore before you take the plunge, you know, there's certain things that you don't have the luxury to do that with, but even, you know, moving to a new city, you can go and test out the city for a couple weeks or even a month and figure out how to do that before you actually move there. And I did that with Denver. I went, I think 3 times in a year to just make sure. And every time I was like, oh my God, I need to be here. Let yourself like ease into it if you have the luxury to do so, and don't dive into something until you truly are confident that it's the right move. And it might not be too. It might not be the right move, and you need to also be okay with that.
Yeah, I think like nothing is permanent. Like there are very few things
Reason,
I can think of.
lifetime.
Yeah, like there are very few things that I feel like are permanent. And I think especially if you're single, especially if you don't have kids, like you have opportunity to really explore life. And a lot of our audience is women between the age of 20 and 40. And like, I think this is the time to explore the potential and the things that you've always wanted to do, and also take risks and be scared. I think that a lot of it is just fear. And if you acknowledge that like fear is just like something, a part of the human experience, it doesn't have to be so charged. It doesn't have to mean something. I do think we open our horizon to evolution and who we are and what we're capable of.
Totally. I think the only thing that's permanent is yourself.
Yeah.
There's the saying, wherever you go, there you are. And it's why introspection and the just time that you spend with yourself is so important, because everything around you will continue to change and evolve. It's supposed to. This is life, but you will always come back to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for coming on. Before I let you go, can you please share, like, just because I know you have them, like 3 non-negotiables in your routine to be just like the most effective?
Oh gosh, where do I even choose from? What I mentioned earlier, my morning walk, I feel like has like saved my days. It's like just the way that I reset in the morning and allow myself that time before just like jumping into everything. I would say, as silly as it sounds, like meal prepping, when I talk about taking a load off of the mental decision making, just like knowing what I'm going to eat allows me to open up that energy to so many other things.
Yeah.
And the third, what do you think the third is?
I don't know, I'm trying to think. Like something for that you have to do to keep your mental health in check, like to be effective during the day.
You know what I was thinking about recently? When I first started my business, I worked nights and weekends, and especially when I was building Catalyst, it was almost like a punishment. Like you overbooked your week, you didn't get enough done. Now you have to work nights and weekends in order to like make up for that time. When I'm my own boss, I can do whatever I want. But I was like punishing myself. And just recently I've had so many weekends in a row where I haven't been traveling. And in my mind, I'm like, you have to spend those weekends being productive because you're here. You're not
make up for it.
occupied. There's no one else around. And I just recently told myself, like, I actually think these weekends are saving your weeks because you're actually able to recharge, and giving myself that permission to have downtime, to not be just because I'm home and no one's around doesn't mean I need to be productive with work or chores, right? So the permission to have a break.
Yeah, without anxiety, without guilt. I need to do that. And I think I'm working on it. I think it takes time. I think people don't realize that like these things, especially these types of things that are rooted in like very deeply ingrained things, they take time.
And experience.
Yeah.
And like chipping away at it.
Yes. It's not going to be like, I've decided that I'm not going to feel anxious anymore about this, and all of a sudden it's gone, and then I'm going to beat myself up if it comes back. Like it's a gradual progression of starting to rewire patterns.
Totally. And I think that we all think we should have it all figured out by now. The more you come to terms with the fact that you'll never have it figured out, and it's always going to feel just like you haven't quite made it yet, that's when you allow yourself the freedom to choose from a place of love versus fear.
I had a friend recently tell me that there's a humility and understanding that you don't have true will. And I was like, you're right. Like, who am I to like, it's like there's almost like ignorance in believing that like you just get to decide and choose and things unfold the way you want them to. So I love that. I ask everybody who's on the podcast, looking back at everything you've been through, like the ups and downs of your career, of your healing, of your relationships, looking back at it all, like how do you see it? How do you see it all?
I feel so lucky to have built such a full life. Not knowing what's going to happen next is honestly exhilarating for me. And just, again, going back and trusting myself through all the things that I've been through and continuing to do that.
Instead of feeling anxious, like you're alchemizing like unknown. And I do think it's not easy, but it's simple to like choose to do that. And I think you've become a pro at it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. Please share where people can find you, follow you, but also can find Catalyst. If there may be a CPG brand, we can link the course below as well so people can find it.
Yeah, I think the easiest place is just Instagram, the PR Maven. Everything's linked in my bio, so you can find it there.
Yay. Thanks, Jess.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I hope you leave here feeling motivated and inspired. Do not forget to rate and review the pod on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And don't forget to follow How I See It Pod so you can keep up with podcast updates and see who's coming on next. And if you're not already, come join the fam and follow at How Han Sees It. Thank you guys.